Namaste, welcome back to Bodh. It's a conversation on Hindu civilizational trajectory, the current movement, the contestations, the attitudes and the temperaments and potential learning pathways. In the last conversation that we had, we traced the composition of the current Hindu discourse. Pankaj, you told us about the different parts of the Hindu discourse today.
Yes.
You mentioned that the significant change that in the last 2 decades, this debate has moved within the fold. We are no longer debating and discussing or contesting with the other.
Yeah.
A lot of this current churn is within the fold.
Yeah.
All of us identify ourselves as Hindu civilizational, Hindu national, Hindu cultural beings.
Yeah.
And we are having a discourse and debate on the ideas that animate us. Right?
Yeah.
Within that, of course, you also painted the different parts of this.
Yeah.
The political Hindus, the idea of the traditional Hindus who are living the lifestyle and who are therefore able to see the continuity in the civilization. But within the traditional mold, you also have the neo-traditionalists, as you call them, who are able to appreciate the value of the old, who see the degeneration in the present, and who think that there is a huge rupture or a discontinuity.
Yeah.
And then you also had the idea of the Hindus influenced by the globalist stance of the discourse, who in their worldview, Hindus attaching themselves to the global liberal bandwagon and finding a unique place for Hindu civilizational view within that is the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Right? So we have all these contestations. Have we exhausted the idea of Hindu discourse composition, or do you think there are a couple of other branches that we need to examine before we can look at it? And I'd also like you to examine the proposition that all of this is within the umbrella of Hindutva.
Yeah.
If you are able to tell us, because that is the idea that has political, social, and cultural currency.
Yeah.
In a way, the way I'm thinking about our conversation is also that it's a way for thinking about Hindutva, negotiating with all the ideas that it has to encounter anyways.
Yes.
Right? So within that larger arc, and maybe there are different sub-branches and pathways. Tell us if we've exhausted everything, or if there are a couple of more that we need to be aware of.
There are some more. For example, there is another branch which will keep coming back to it. There is Hindu pacifists.
Okay.
Those who have, those who believe in the call for unity.
Okay.
Almost a similar call for unity which Congress gave to the run-up to the independence, which we talked about in elsewhere.
Yeah.
So, to come back to, like you asked, can there be a case made for all of these branches for Hindutva? Are they really branches?
Are they parts of
Hindutva, this fold?
Yeah.
So, certainly, a case can be made for them being part of Hindutva, because all of them, at least most of them, claim themselves to be Hindutva. So, if somebody is taking up the identity, at least the word, certainly the case can be made.
Because they are self-identifying.
They are self-identifying with the word.
Yeah.
Apart from that, there may be a case, there may be some cases in which they have gone so far while using the name Hindutva from Hindu fundamentals that you can no longer claim them.
You think
to be.
We have cases like that? Or?
We have cases, certainly. An argument can be made for such a case.
Okay.
And certainly one faction in the factions that we are going to talk about thinks like this about one faction at least, another faction.
So let's begin with that, right? Because the political nationalists have the idea of the sacred geography.
Yeah.
They have the idea of nationalism as a glue. Yeah. They have the idea of freedom movement as a moral force. So there's a lot of things that bind them, which are deeply Hindu.
Yeah.
Similarly, obviously, with the traditionalists, they are harking back to the principles of Sanatana Dharma.
Yes.
Whether they are able to see it manifesting today or not, depending on the where they fall in the spectrum, they still accept that as the core. Right?
Yeah.
Even within the Hindu liberal worldview, of course, they have appended the hierarchy, but they still like to broadly be aligned with the religious view of Hinduism, at least.
Yeah.
Or maybe if religion is too far-fetched for them, at least at a cultural level, celebrating your festivals and identifying that as the marker for being a Hindu. So where are we losing out on, or when you say there's a faction that can actually be potentially using the idea but not representing it, what are the characteristics of that?
Yes. So to start with, actually all of them none of the factions shy away from the word Hindu itself. So that's there the case for Hindutva.
Yeah.
All of them proudly, even Hindu atheists, when we'll come to them, they are not cautious of the word Hindu. All of them work under the umbrella of this word Hindu. Whether they measure up to it or not is a different case, but all of them use that word. So certainly there is a case for them being in the same universe. Now, let's begin with the political Hindus as that is the most dominant branch. There are subcategories in political Hindus. Basically, their dominant idea is very simple. They have accepted economy as the supreme principle, and they want to tailor.
So the Artha Sarvopari Hindu is a part of this. Right? There's a close compact between the political. Yeah, okay.
It is a part. Artha Sarvopari is a subcategory of political Hindus. There is another category which you can say an extreme case of Artha Sarvopari Hindu.
Okay.
But they have also started distancing a lot of, with a huge majority of Artha Sarvopari Hindu do not see themselves in that extremist viewpoint.
Okay, so they're closer to the political economic consensus.
Yes, consensus. So within the political, what is the basis of Artha Sarvopari Hindu? Very simply, they consider economy to be the supreme principle. If a dharmic fundamental, if a dharmic law comes in between,
if there is a conflict
between economy and between earth and dharma, then their priorities are extremely clear. They are very clear about their worldview. That earth will take, economy will take the supreme precedence. And
also Chanakya also recommended that without actually understanding the full
they back project their own desires on Chanakya. Chanakya worked very much within the Purushartha system. So here they are appending the Purushartha system. They are saying that there is a reason Dharma comes first in Purushartha system. First there is Dharma, then Arth, then Kam, and then Moksha. So they have appended the Purushartha system. They say that Earth is the supreme principle, which is not so in Hindu civilization. So as soon as they adopt this system, the attendant problems and of the culture in which this worldview was made, it is also imported into
We're importing the values and therefore the conflicts as well.
Therefore the conflict values, because they have, in a way, they are jumping on the bandwagon of liberalization and globalization. Very simply, their thought is that by liberalizing and globalizing, the West became supreme, they became extremely powerful, they started ruling the world. And so we also need to become like them.
That is realism.
That is, and that is the same urge which a lot of lot of reformers, freedom fighters, reformers during the British era had. For example, the famous case of Raja Rammohn Roy. The need to project Hindu Dharma in monotheistic terms, prophetic monotheistic terms, and present it to them, because they thought that a prophetic monotheistic value system, worldview became extremely successful. So there must be, who is powerful must also be true. So that this heuristic.
So you dress up to offer yourself for validation.
Yes. So you become them, and that's how you become powerful. So that is at least a first step in that you're feeling that you have to rise up. But you have to rise up by becoming the other and not by projecting your own thing. So in a way, this urge of Artha Sarvopari Hindu to make economy the supreme principle is a way they are mirroring the West, in which they said that trade economic value trumps every other value, morality, ethics, religion, everything else. So they are mirroring that desire. So this is the first category. Now let's talk of the extreme case of Artha Sarvopari Hindu. When you, like we said, when you adopt a certain binary, certain terminology, phraseology, it will also import from the back door all the attendant problems which were there in the cultural context in which those ideas were generated. For example, secularism is not an Indian idea, a Hindu idea. When you import it here, when you implement it here, it will create the problem which was not here. So similarly, if you import these ideas, lots of other ideas will also come. Ideas like atheism, ideas like, and it's ironic, but secularism once again. Because keeping religion aside and making it private affair is a very standard secular demand, which the political Hindus also demand. That
because that is under the rubric of individual rights.
Individual rights. So their framework is unlimited economic growth. That is the desire that they have. With that, all the attendant systems of adult franchisee, electoral democracy based on constitution based on individual rights. All of those values have to be imported because they say that it's very clear that if you want unlimited economic growth, then it has to be through development of industry, technology. For that, you need a constitution based on individual rights, rule of law, with a constitution based on individual narrative of individual rights, which again brings in all the attendant adult franchisee democracy, their kind of democracy, and their kind of idea of elections.
Which essentially gives them the moral logic of consumption. Because the rights are there, it can sanction whatever whatever I'm permitted to do, or I have a coherence between what I'm allowing myself to do from a larger framework itself.
One problem with rights, because we are discussing, is that you can never imagine rights realistically without imagining the attendant duties. What are the costs of those rights? The basic problem with
what secures those rights?
What secures those rights? The basic problem with the Enlightenment worldview is that they always talk about rights. They never talk about the cost, attendant cost of those rights. You are ascertaining the rights of human beings. What attendant cost would it have on environment, on Mother Earth?
And they talk about trade-offs in policy, but they don't look at trade-off in this.
What is the trade-off of human rights? Everyone, it sounds very nice to ears that you're talking about individual rights, human rights, but what cost does it have on environment, on whole planet as such? Because we are certainly, the ecological point of view, it's certainly not isolated from the rest of the environment. We are a part of the environment. We may be dominant, but we are part of the environment. How can you ascertain rights without thinking about the rest of cosmos, rest of ecology? So all of these problems come barging in once you adopt this terminology in the Hindu framework. You might call it Hindu framework, but ultimately it will push you towards a point where it will push against all the Hindu institutions and fundamentals. For example, the Arth Sarvopari idea is that we have a vision of future and present, of Hindu India's future and present, in which that vision is of unlimited economic growth. And for that, certain Hindu ideas are no longer compatible. For example, the Hindu idea of contentment, in contentment with materials to consume, that is a wrong idea, they say. If you are contented with the conditions in which you are born in, then you will not strive for progress. And that is actually a hurdle in economic progress.
Progress is consumption, consumption is growth.
This is how they translate very well. So, a happy and satisfied individual for them is not a good citizen. Because then he's not striving for consuming more. If that is not happening, then GDP is not increasing. Economy is not growing. So if every Hindu would be satisfied in his own circumstances, then growth will not happen. So they see it as a roadblock in their idea of unlimited economic growth. If you take that idea to extreme...
Isn't this what goes on with the idea of modernity? Right? Modernity has come to mean this kind of relentless march towards a specific goal. Is that how we should understand modernity, or should we disambiguate it further?
It is certainly connected to it. We cannot disconnect it to this current debate. Because all the time when you listen to the debates, there is this tussle between, there's this tug of war between modernity and tradition. They keep pitting tradition against modernity. And modernity has come to, in colloquial lingo, symbolize contemporary, the word contemporary. And whatever is, by modern they mean that whatever is contemporary, whatever is new, whatever is futuristic, forward-looking, is modern. And tradition is something very old and ossified in the past, archaic, which is not true. Actually, when we come to think of it, modernity is a construct of a time and place in Western Europe. It is a response to the disillusionment that was happening with the positivist. So, what happens with scientific revolution and industrial revolution, along with the Enlightenment in the West, that their old Judeo-Christian world is breaking down in some ways. They are still continuing a lot of their core ideas, but they are also coming out of that shell, and they are creating something new, a new paradigm, a new worldview. That worldview is modern. So modern has a very historical meaning.
It has a very specific meaning.
Very specific historical meaning. Modern does not mean contemporary. Modern does not mean ever new. Modern does not mean automatically forward-looking. It means a certain set of behavior and systems and institutions which are attendant upon us now. On the other hand, it's actually very funny that people see tradition as archaic. Actually, it is tradition which is ever new.
It is constantly negotiating.
It is constantly negotiating with the time and place that it is in, which does not mean that it is a nihilist idea where it keeps adopting everything. Of course not. Tradition is that which ever is. Sanatan Dharma is, because Sanatan, it is eternal, that which ever is. It keeps the universal fundamentals alive by always negotiating with whatever is contingent upon time and place. So it negotiates with new along with keeping the universals alive. It is not a debate between old and new. It is a debate between what is eternal, what is universal, which has to be preserved, conserved and taken forward. And then what needs to be changed? What is contingent upon time and place? It is always changing in tradition. What is not contingent upon time and place, what is universal, is always continuing. That is tradition. So actually it is tradition which always negotiates with the new. Modernity will affix you in a certain mode of life, which is the product of a certain culture, certain time and certain place.
So you're making a case that Hindutva now has a strand which has fully co-opted or internalized this worldview while claiming to be Hindutva. The Hindu modernity as Hindutva. That's the kind of phrase that we keep hearing, right? And do you think that this is because there is a fundamental clash of values here? It's not just when we examine the question of whether Hindutva can fold all of this. You can think about the political Hindus because there is the compact of a sacred geography, a moral force of freedom struggle, and a general respect for the culture overall. While, of course, privileging the political power, there is also the idea of tradition and neo-tradition, where, of course, the idea is central to the Sanatan Dharma principles. But you reckon that this branch of Hindu liberal thought is now outgrown, and it's not entirely in tune with Hindu values.
It is. When actually the core of the Arth Sarvopari idea is also not Hindu. You do not upend the Purusharth hierarchy. Dharma is always supreme. But the extremist faction takes it to absurd levels. They are not just questioning the Dharma Shastra part. Of course, a lot of political Hindus will not, if they will not all of them disrespect the Dharma Shastras, but they simply think that it is not relevant for present and future. That is their standpoint. So a lot of them do not do not peg with the Dharma Shastras. That is a different thing. But this extremist faction is actually even going to Upanishads and Vedas and very Hindu darshan, core Hindu fundamentals and philosophy darshan, and they are saying that very Hindu metaphysics is wrong and it is a roadblock in economic development. For example, they say that moksha is an idea which poor Hindus, which was created in a circumstance, in an era.
It's a response to...
It's a response to poverty. It's a response to a state where they are unable to have unlimited economic progress.
So there is no ontological basis for it. It's not a truth by
itself.
It's a
historical development. It's basically a ideational construct. Maybe once again, it sounds like constructed by Brahmins to keep poor people happy and contented in their lack of consumer goods.
Material
lack of material prosperity. To keep them happy, they gave this idea of moksha, this otherworldly idea that you have to, let go of all these goods, all this consumption. You have to have freedom. Moksha says that you do not have the freedom of consumption. You have to have freedom from consumption, from these desires. So they say that was a construct of people who were poor and they did not have any other way, material prosperity. Now that we have means of material prosperity, we have to jettison the very idea of moksha, because it is a roadblock in endless consumption, which is the idea of endless unlimited growth. So they are questioning the very metaphysics, the very basis of Vedas and Upanishads, very core of Hindu identity, Hindu existence, by saying that moksha is something dependent on historical
So
evolution.
karma phala,
All that goes out there.
everything is.
Yeah, because the basic thing is,
And would you say that is the big difference? Because this debate about the excess of Vedanta, if you will, right?
Yeah.
And how that might have impacted some of the things is there within the Hindu fold or the Hindu darshanas as well.
Yeah.
Shakta tradition will have a certain view on that.
Yeah.
But there is no debate or disconnect on the central tenets of karma, karma phala, punarjanma.
yes,
So that is where the Hindu nihilist view, which is coming in now as modernity,
yes.
is different from the traditional debates within the Hindu.
There is no
culture.
dispute between Tantra and Vedanta in
Yeah.
this case.
Yeah.
Tantra just says that there are ways of changing your circumstances by doing certain sadhanas. Vedanta doesn't disagree. Vedanta says that your goal should be to not
Outgrowth,
change this and go
transcend.
forward, and transcend all of this. Tantra says that is also the goal, but while we are going along, we can also make your surroundings more pleasant and conducive to you. So it's not very, they are not, there is
Divergent.
disagreement.
Yeah.
There is no divergence between them. But here they are, this nihilists of Hindutva, if you would, they are saying that the very idea of moksha is we have to jettison it. It was the creation of poor Hindus who could not consume, who had no means of consumption, endless consumption. So they came up with this idea, basically this totem in which they found satisfaction for thousands of years. But now when we have means of endless consumption,
technology has emancipated us from the clutches of moksha.
From clutches of moksha and biology.
So, biology as well.
Because the earth has limited resources. So once while they are jettisoning moksha, they are not just jettisoning the metaphysics of Hinduism. They are also jettisoning all the ecological wisdom that this earth has limited resources. And just because of that, if not for anything else, if not for your own metaphysical reasons, then because there are limitations on resources, you have to have a limit on consumption. So they are jettisoning both, not just moksha as an idea, also the constant of resources with technology as the absolving principle.
So the intellectual conceit, if you look at it from this perspective, but certainly an intellectual position within that worldview, the way I see it, is that for them the idea that technology progress changes the or improves upon the input to output ratio, right? That with the same material you can produce more. So therefore the response that they have is that when we talk about consumption and when we talk about increased growth, we are not necessarily saying that it will come from new materials or it will not come at the expense of materials that are there. But technology improves upon the ability to transform and get more output per input. Right? That's this one. Right? Now, the challenge I find with that view is one, it asks you to take a leap of faith, right? And
it is a leap of faith.
It defers responsibility. So, what happens if you don't find the technology? What happens, as we often discover, there are after effects of the technology. What happens if the cultures do not respond to the technology? So it asks you to defer and suspend all those questions and just take a leap of faith, saying that this can be improved because it has been done in some cases in the past. So some of the logic that is deployed is convenient, right? And it is a bit of a conceit that is there. And we are now seeing, not just from the Indian context, this debate is there in the Western world as active as it is here, that there is now a recognition of planetary boundaries and ecological ceiling, right? And your innovation has to operate within that paradigm. It cannot be on the basis of a promise of an interstellar movement or the planet of a new planet with life, right? So we are reaching that level now, and you feel that and maybe Gandhi had this in mind when he said that the world cannot afford India taking up the same industrial revolution view, right? He seemed to represent a Hindu view in this. Right? So this is a central challenge, and Hindutva, while it can extend to political, economic, traditional character, it might not be able to negotiate and include the nihilism within it, its fold, right? So that's as far as nihilism within the Hindutva discourse is concerned. What about pacifism? You brought that up early on. Why is and how do we locate it, and how do we answer the question whether that represents Hindutva or whether it can coexist with Hindutva?
Hindu pacifism, you have to go back in history and go back to early 20th century when another such call was made from the Congress party. At that time, although Congress was not very clear in that, it was the representative of the Hindu side, mostly. It was supposed to be, although it never claimed it very clearly, but it was supposed to be representing the Hindu side. And when the call for independence was given from the British, Mahatma Gandhi thought, and many other leaders also, it was not just him, who thought that we need a united front with Muslims. And a call for unity was sent out. And we have discussed earlier also that how that call for unity resulted in a situation in which Hindus deracinated themselves, de-Hinduized themselves, created a neutral platform on which the Muslims never came.
They never opted into it.
Opted into it. So it was a ridiculous position in which we left all that was Hindu, created a platform, secular, neutral platform, which only Hindus occupied. So Muslims remained very deeply Muslims. They kept becoming more and more Muslims. And we kept becoming less and less Hindus. Similarly, now we see a call for unity, which has, again, it is called Samanvaya, that we cannot go on like this. It is said that
Samanvaya is a Hindu philosophical construct. The explanation is that Hindu thought has managed to assimilate and synthesize so many different strands.
It is.
Right?
But the other party which you are trying to unite with, it also has to agree the terms. So for all the invaders and migrants into India, they all accepted the Hindu worldview because it was a very, in that sense, very open worldview.
It was a dominant force as well. So it also had the power of aspiration.
Yes, power of aspiration. And if you think of it, it was a very easy way of any foreigner, any foreign community to come inside and live here. Because Hindus believe that if you are a certain group, you can live as a certain group, you can have your own food, you can have your own customs, you can marry within yourself. You just have to agree to certain Sanatan, eternal, universal principles.
So there was a place
in this country.
So
they had the greatest freedom in exercising their own rites and customs and rituals. So that was a very...
even the persecuted were able to come back and practice their religion.
Yes. So it was very... Parsis came in India. A lot of these groups came in India.
Even Muslims.
Even Muslims, And we treated them as jatis. So,
correct.
So it is a certain jati.
And they have their own devta.
We don't disturb them. We just don't marry into them. We just don't eat their food or their ours. And then we respect them, their own customs and rituals. So it was aspiration, but along with that, it was very beneficial to any community which came. But as we have discussed, as Voice of India, as Sita Ramji, as Sri Ram Sarojji keep repeating again and again and again, that you cannot have a unity with someone, with a faction, with a community, and basically an idea which does not want to come on board with you,
which doesn't consider you human,
consider you even human. So what if there is no point
there is a point of convergence in that.
Convergence. There is no common platform, because they say that if their God is the only God and if their prophet is the only representative of God, even in that declaration, all the possibility of coming together on a same platform is gone until their followers disavow from that paradigm. It is not possible for us to have any saman with them. So saman is possible with some individuals who have left that paradigm. There are, of course, many people.
Mechanisms also for that.
Mechanisms also for that. There are many individuals in Muslim community, of course, in Christianity and Islam, who have left that and who are coming back to the Hindu roots. And Hindus welcome them.
So the way you look at Samanvaya is that there are certain boundary conditions.
Yes.
Right. And within the boundary conditions, it has been the Hindu historical experience. It is the Hindu mind, the way it operates. But if we are expected to understand Samanvaya as an idea of coexistence and happiness with somebody who is out to destroy you, that cannot be part of the bargain.
Yes.
Maybe the case that they're making is that we're doing it from a position of strength now, right? And therefore our call for Samanvaya is not belittling the historical experience we've had, but recognizing that we are now an ascending force and therefore we can dictate the terms. Would you agree then that it is a possibility?
I would like to give an analogy. a poison is poison to a weak body or a strong body. So if you take in something which is conducive to the environment, to the biological environment, the host, if it is hostile to that host, then it will destroy the very system which the host has created, and there will no longer be a system to welcome people and communities and ideas.
So that the moral logic of offering that as a potential creative way forward for Hindutva seems to be that we have a reality to contend with in terms of sheer number of people that are there of particular denominations and how you have to coexist, right? So there is this realist view, if you will, which is somehow used as a peg to justify pacifist attitude, right? So how do we look at that?
It is basically...
Is it irresponsible to deny the option of Samanvaya?
No, it is not. Because it is a defeat. I see it not as a realist, but as a defeatist way of looking at it. If you see the origins of Islam, the communities that we are trying to have someone with,
and I think we should call it that. Samanvaya is not some metaphysical construct. It is not a metaphysical. It is a metaphysical construct deployed in the service of a socio-political coalition that you're trying to build.
No Hindu sampradaya ever denied a Muslim or a Christian who respect their tradition, their sampradaya, who want to learn and meditate in that certain practice. You go to some of the most extreme of sampradaya, which you call them, none of them will deny an individual who respect the Hindu sampradaya, the gods and goddesses, that value system, and they will all accept.
So we don't need to couch it in another language. Samanvaya is a appeasement.
Appeasement. It is a very political idea. It is a civilization.
It has to be, because it is being articulated in the idea of Hindutva.
In the idea of Hindutva. Civilizationally, it's a defeatist idea. Because you are saying that we do not have the power to win. So let's accept defeat and patch it up as Samanvaya. And civilizationally, it's a defeatist idea because you need to reclaim what you have lost. For Sanatan Dharma to regain its glory. Not just glory, this is not about some idea. This is about recreating a Sanatan society, recreating a Hindu society. For that, we need to regain the ground that we have lost morally, civilizationally, physically.
Geographically,
physically, all of those terms have to be reclaimed.
Culturally, of course.
Culturally. And that is why you cannot let a hostile idea, an idea which is hostile to Sanatan Dharma and very idea of Bharatvarsh, exist as it is. Someone will come on the cost of, are they willing to come towards our side? For example, are they willing to claim that Allah is not the only God? That our conception of Brahm is also valid? Are Muslim sects willing to say that? Does Syrian Christian community or does Protestant or Roman Catholic community, are they willing to say that Ram is also a path to salvation? Krishna is also a path to salvation? Once they say, we should be ready to extend our hand.
And this has been attempted so many times.
Times.
So the realist position is to understand that these are incompatible systems as long as the axioms remain what they are. So now we've looked at...
We should not couch political urgency, political exigency, a defeatist attitude into realist terms. It is,
and use a metaphysical
framework
stance for that.
And say that Hindutva is bigger than Hindu Dharma.
So you cannot fold Sanatan Dharma, that is Hinduism, under the Hindutva.
Sanatan Dharma is always the primary category, the most sarvopari category. In that, you can never fold anything under anything.
Great. So I think what we have to offer so far in the conversations that we've had on the subject is a historical, cultural and intellectual understanding of the trajectory of the Hindu movement, the different ideas that it is composed of as of today, an organizing vocabulary to understand and create structures of thought in your own mind. Along the way, we also mentioned some habits of mind that you should cultivate to keep this creative and not destructive. But at the same time, we also have some propositions on what constitutes a creative ferment and what is not part of that. I think we've also been clear on that. So I think we've arrived at this moment now where we are saying that this is the landscape of our discourse. And within this, the contestations have to play out. And therefore, in future conversations, we can probably look at what is the hierarchy of actions that we can recognize. And what are the ideological, intellectual, philosophical and cultural strengths that we need to draw from, right? Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.